The dead are never far away, always watching, always listening. Hello, I'm Gemma Maudsley, and welcome to my podcast, The Wraith. Tonight, we continue with Chapter 33. It was 4 days before Jill heard from Paul again. 96 hours of endless torment as she waited for the axe to fall. Toby settled into his old routine as though nothing had happened. But the happiness at his return was overshadowed by the certain knowledge there was a price to be paid. Her family returned to the farmhouse once news reached them that the child was safe, and she was glad of their presence. They proved a godsend at keeping reporters at bay and shielded her from the horror unfolding on the TV and in the newspapers. The outcry at the discovery of the children's bodies at the cottage became national news, and there was great speculation once the remains of the men were recovered from the cellar. Luckily, the police made no mention of the events when they questioned Toby, and Tom's explanation of how he found him wandering on the road was grudgingly accepted. While the investigating officers might have had doubts of the circumstance surrounding the child's recovery, they did not push the matter further. And Toby's wide-eyed explanation about the men in the masks was hard to dismiss as his imagination. Anyway, they were more intent on finding those responsible. The fact she had forced her son to lie about his abduction left Jill with a gnawing pain in her gut, but it was for the best in the long run. At least she fooled herself into believing that this was the case. Once the questioning was out of the way, the police insisted Toby be taken to the hospital for examination, but Jill refused on the grounds that he'd been upset enough. So they settled instead from a visit from her employer, Dr. Williams, who confirmed the boy was physically unharmed, if a little dehydrated. Joe returned to his new life, and she was glad to see him go. It pained her someone who had once meant so much to her now failed to draw even the slightest response from her aching heart. The sound of laughter roused her, and she smiled as Toby tumbled through the kitchen door, closely followed by Bess and her pups. They refused to leave his side since his return, and despite her mother's sniffs of disapproval and muttered admonishments about the dog's presence in the bedrooms as unhygienic, Jill allowed them to return to normal. The pups now slept on Toby's bed and were a comfort when he woke crying in the night. She knew it would be many years before her son recovered from his ordeal, if ever, and she would not deny him the presence of the pups. Bess resumed her place beside Jill's bed. On the odd time when she did manage to sleep, it was only for a few minutes during the day, and on the rare occasions when the house was quiet. At night she stayed alert, waiting for what must come next. She knew she was safe during the day, as the Wraith needed the night, and it would be during the hours of darkness, while everyone slept, that she would come for her. "Why don't you have a lie down?" Her mother rubbed her arm. "You're exhausted, and we'll keep a careful eye on Toby." "Thanks, ma'am, but I'm too wound up to sleep." "Well, just lie on the bed and close your eyes." She could see the worry etched in her mother's face. "You might manage to drop off." "Okay," she smiled just to please her. "I'll try." "Good girl. I'll call you when dinner is ready." Using the banister, Jill managed to drag herself up the stairs. Once at the top, she looked longingly into her bedroom, but decided trying to sleep was a lost cause. Allowing her eyes to stray to the door that led to the attic, her stomach lurched at the realization she had not returned there since the night she had summoned the Wraith. Looking around, making sure no one was about, she turned the handle and edged the door open just enough to allow her to slip inside. As she tiptoed up the wooden stairs, the familiar scent of the attic was overwhelming, and she brought her hand to her mouth to hold back her cry. It smelled as it did on the first day she had come there, of dust and mould, of dry paper and trapped teeth. But that was before, in a time when her only pain was that of losing Joe. She'd lived 1,000,000 lifetimes since then, or so it seemed. Now she was returning to the place that was once her salvation and was now the cause of her downfall. Picking up the lighter, she lifted the glass dome of the lamp and lit the wick. All traces of her grandmother's footprints had been obliterated by her own comings and goings, and Jill's heart ached at their loss. She was no longer startled by the large mirror or the old sheet that shrouded it. There were no secrets, no unexplored things to discover within the trunks. All the excitement she once felt belonged to another time, when she was innocent, her mind untarnished by the evil of the world, and her soul unstained. The triangle of Solomon lay across the lid of one of the chests, and she picked it up. Its sides were still stained with traces of earth from the graveyard. "If you're going to come for me, do it now. I can hear you waiting." But there was no reply, nothing to break the silence of the attic. Sinking down on the floor, she pulled the black cloak from the chest and wrapped it around her shoulders. While she had been prepared to do anything, face any danger to recover her child, the realization of paying for her deeds seemed far off, and she half expected something would happen to save her. Unlike Toby, she had no Superman to fly to her aid. The thing that frightened her most was leaving her child. The thoughts of death distressed her, but being parted from the one person she loved more than life was more painful still. For the first time in days, she allowed the tears to fall. "Ah, there you are, girl." She was so intent on her suffering, she hadn't heard the footsteps approach. "Ah, now." Her father eased his way down beside her and brushed her face with his hand. "Why all the tears?" "I'm okay, Dad, really." She tried to smile. "Of course you're not okay. How could you be after all you've been through?" He placed an arm round her shoulders. "It's not that." She left the words hang in the air, unsure of his reaction. "Well, what is it then?" He waited as the silence settled all around him. "Did you not wonder at Toby's sudden reappearance?" "I suppose I did," he said, "but I put it down to prayer, though I take it now that God had nothing to do with it." "No, it was not his doing, though the prayers can't have hurt." She noticed how old he'd become. She never imagined either of her parents growing old or feeble. They always seemed so strong, immortal. And the realization they would now be all her son had added to her terror. As she recounted the tale about the wraith, Jill pointed out the various items she used to summon it: the books, the triangle, the cloak. She was afraid to look at him as she spoke, sure she would see the horror at what she'd done echoed in his eyes. "Well, that's it. I know it sounds fantastic, but every word is true, and I will have to pay for what I've done." When she looked at him from the corner of her eye, she was surprised to find he had turned away. At first, she imagined he was so ashamed he could not bear to look at her. Then she saw the silver line of a tear as it trailed down his cheek. "Dad," she touched his arm, "I'm so sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry about." He fiddled in his trouser pockets for a handkerchief. The sound of his nose blowing echoed like thunder in the quiet of the attic. "I suppose any mother would have done the same." "And is there no reasoning with this thing, this wraith?" "I don't think so," Jill said. "She committed suicide, so the balance of her mind was disturbed even before she died. I made a terrible mistake in choosing her. I thought as a mother she would understand. Obviously I was wrong, and now I have to pay the price." "Is she still around?" he asked. "I haven't seen her since the night we found Toby, but there's no doubt she's around somewhere. I must cast another spell to release her. And God help me, Dad, I'm terrified of going back to that graveyard." "Well, girl," he took her hand in his, "you'll have to go back. I'm sorry. But the poor old thing is trapped and very tormented, if what you say is true, and in a state of limbo. Sure you wouldn't wish that on anyone, would you now?" "You're right." She knew he was right. Marie deserved to be set free, and it fell to her to do so. You're right, Dad. I'll go tonight and finish the spell. God help me after that. Will you promise me one thing? Anything, girl. Don't let Mam screw up Toby's life. You realise you're all he'll have once I'm gone, don't you? I never thought about it, but God is good. Maybe it won't come to that. You'll have to face it, Dad. It will come to that. The Wraith isn't human. It can't be reasoned with. I wish you'd never come to this place, her father said. I know, Dad. I've thought that since the day Toby went missing. If Joe could have kept it in his pants, none of this might have happened. Ted! She laughed at the coarseness of his words. Never had she heard her father speak in such a way. She had never even heard him utter a swear word. Well, it's true, isn't it? If you'd waited until you were married to have a child, things might have been different. Dad, these are different times. No one frowns when someone has a child out of wedlock. That well may be. He fumbled for the handkerchief again. But in my day... I know, Dad, Jill interrupted. In your day, everyone got married and stayed together, no matter how miserable they were. Times have changed. That well may be, he blustered, but it's not for the better. She was saved the trouble of answering him by the sound of her mother's voice echoing up the stairs. We end here for now, but the story does not rest, and neither do the dead. So until next Friday night, stay safe, my friends. And remember, if you've enjoyed this, please share and subscribe. I love to know that you're out there listening.